Welcome to Interior Analysis. I'm Evan Westman.
I'm Jelani Kelly.
I'm David Jones.
And today we are talking about Mission Impossible, the original one. This is, it might be a little extreme to call it a favorite of mine, but I like this quite a bit. I saw it first on the last day of fourth grade, so a while back. Eventually I saw the whole series over several years. I'm so stoked for 7 and 8. Right now, this first one is tied with 6 as my favorite of the series. So for you guys, I introduced both of you to this series last year when we did our watch along with Mission Impossible 2. So I want to do this question one at a time. Jelani, how was this after having seen Mission Impossible 2 as your introduction?
You could only go up, so it was good. I really liked the beginning.
When you say the beginning, is that opening scene? Is it like
everybody
the first
dies?
Oh, when everything's going down.
Yep.
How did the tone shift feel to you? Because I was thinking this might be the hardest tone shift from consecutive installments in the same series.
Oh, you mean from Goofy in the second to this?
Yeah.
I feel like it would have felt stranger if I would have watched them in the correct order. So this was better. I could handle the tone shift here.
Okay. And David, you told us in the group chat that you have actually watched all of them since seeing the second one. So you can talk about the whole series if you'd like, just because I guess it's been like the past year that you've been getting into it.
Yeah, and I did it pretty quickly. I watched them all like the next week after we did 2, just to like go through them because I was curious because they're so famous. And I remember at least growing up, my mom, maybe my dad too, but I feel like my mom more so was more of an action fan. And like the original Mission Impossible trilogy and the original Bourne trilogy were both in my house, I remember, but I just didn't watch them growing up because action didn't really speak to me. I wanted a little bit more escapism. I liked sci-fi and fantasy and horror and such. So going into like seeing it after the fact, I really appreciated it. I agree with Jelani. I think if I went 1 to 2, I would have been really confused because it's just like 1 is such its own, like it's a really Brian De Palma suspense thriller film. So to like get into that and then go into that high camp, goofy, ridiculous Mission Impossible 2, I think would have been like wild. And I appreciate some moments in 2, but there's only very few quick moments that are fleeting. And after watching them all, I put together the list and ranked them in my mind. It's been a while since I've seen them, but so like 2 I have as 6th. That's my least favorite. I don't really, it's like literally I can just watch like YouTube clips of like the specific insane stunts and I get satisfied. And then I'm stuck between this and Mission Impossible 3 for 4th/5th because they both satisfy me, but I think this one overall is like a tighter story. But I love the performance of Philip Seymour Hoffman in the third one more so than the guy in this one. So like it balances out for me. So I really am stuck between those. And then 3rd, I put the 5th one because I don't really remember it all that well. I thought it was like fine. I thought it was nothing like, especially compared to 4 and 6 to me, I didn't think it was anything special. I thought it was like really technically impressive, but like so it was 4 and 6. And they brought a little bit more to the table otherwise. So and then for 2, I put 4 because I really do like 4 and I enjoyed like everything Brad Bird did with the story. And I enjoy, and it's like, it's established in this one, like anytime an agent gets turned away from his agency or whatever, or they're framed and they're like thought to have done something wrong and they have to like fight against the organization to get back, those stories I can kind of get into. And that's why I liked this one and I like 4. And that trend kind of continues with 6 too. So I really like 6 for that same reason. And then like the stunts just get more and more intense. And like as we get into the episode, you'll see like the biggest sell for me in the series is all the stunts and the spectacle end. Everything else I kind of check out for because I'm not like the biggest espionage action person.
Okay. So we have pretty different rankings then, it sounds like. I won't go in detail, but top to bottom, I have 6 and 1 at the top, tied. Then 5, probably 4, 3, 2. It's a little bit tough near the bottom, but I've seen like a lot of people recently, because like everyone's getting hyped for 7, giving their rankings and opinions and stuff. And it's interesting to me that aside from 2, like everyone pretty much agrees that 2 is the worst, but it's kind of fun in its own way. Everything else is like pretty split on the rankings. Like nothing really stands out as the best. Nothing really stands out as specifically worst. It's just, they're all very different from each other. Especially because the first 5 movies have different directors. And then 6 is Chris McQuarrie, who did 5, and he's doing 7 and 8. And I like the tone that he's bringing, but they are like, there's a core to them that's kind of there in everything except a bit with 2. But it's interesting to see how split people are on which flavor of Mission Impossible they like best. I don't want to like tout one over the other. I have very specific reasons that I like some of them better, and we'll get into a bit of that, but I do just find it interesting in that way as a franchise. Did you guys have other initial reactions you wanted to share before we get into topics?
It was good until the end.
Okay.
That's it. We'll get into that.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll get much more into that in your topic.
Yeah, I was like, this feels like the topic a bit, but other than that, I feel like I really enjoyed. I like how like the technology was so early 2000s, like the way they show hacking, like he's just typing in like alarm floor 21, and then like the alarm for floor 21 goes off, or he's like, what else does he type? He types like jam phone signal, and then like the phone signal's jammed, and I'm like, yeah, that's hacking.
Yeah, the thing that the technology thing that stuck out to me the most was when he's searching for Job on that like proto internet that he uses. I was like, is there some like old internet mechanic that lets him know that he's like contacting the right Job through these like search engines? Like it seems like he sends the email. I'm like, how does he know that's the email address for this person that he's not even positive is like, that he doesn't even know if they go by Job. He's like going on this weird hunch. I was just wondering if there's like, is that how internet worked in 96, that you just kind of knew somehow?
Yeah, I was curious about that too. And then I also felt really bad for him because they have like the montage of him like spending the whole night translating the message, sending it to every possible Job in every language all over the world, and then like just for the first message to come back in English, because you know the audience has to understand. I was like, damn, he could have just sent that first email and went to bed. Poor Ethan.
Yeah, I don't know if they had copy paste back. Well, I guess it wouldn't matter because he had to translate it, but no Google Translate probably. What a strange time for technology.
This is another thing I'm nostalgic for. I didn't realize this the first time I watched Mission Impossible 1, but now rewatching it, if there's any Spy Kids fans here, or Spy Kids fans listening, I never realized how much of the first Spy Kids specifically is paying homage to the first Mission Impossible and their gadgets. Like the whole mask pull off, there's that in Spy Kids. The whole explosive gum, there's that in Spy Kids. I was like, this is incredible. I had no idea, so that's kind of fun.
I've never seen Spy Kids, but don't they have the thumb people?
Yeah, they do.
What is that?
That is a deformed creature that the evil person made in the lab. They're pretty much like their servants.
That's freaky.
Yeah, I never saw them, but my younger sisters had a phase where they got really into Spy Kids, so I like walked by them watching a few of those movies.
I loved Spy Kids.
I've seen Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
You saw that, but not Spy Kids. You saw the spin-off terrible one. That's like not terrible, but like it's giving Spy Kids 3 and not Spy Kids 1 and 2. But you never saw. You gotta go back. Those are classic.
They had MODOK. They did have
Mr.
Electric MODOK.
They did.
I don't think I realized till I was older that was George Lopez.
I wonder how he feels about that. Just seeing himself that way, because that's something.
I mean, now he's in Blue Beetle. So.
Yep.
calling Batman a fascist. You know, who's laughing now?
Yeah.
Also, fun fact: you remember the motorcycle crash in Mission Impossible 2, where they jumped at each other?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad and I talked about that movie briefly and what the movie was, and like he got annoyed when dude like revved the left side, because my dad, used to ride motorcycles and used to be a mechanic, so he got annoyed when dude like revved the left handle of the motorcycle, because that doesn't do anything. The right side of the handle, the right handle.
Wow, that's what took him out.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Now
going.
I can't enjoy Mission Impossible 2 anymore, Jelani.
That was my thought. I was like, that's what took you out, Dad? It wasn't the crash after, like you were looking for accuracy when it came to, all right.
That's what amazes me about people. That was the first time I experienced that head on, was like, it was whenever Frozen came out. And one of the annoying kids in my school was like, it's so stupid. Like, how can her tear unfreeze her sister? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, girl, how did the freeze hit her heart?
Yeah.
To begin with, what do you mean? How did you get on the bandwagon then and then get off at the end? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's like watching Harry Potter and going, he gets an invisibility cloak? Yeah, okay. You're an hour into it, then that's what takes you out. My topic for this is making complexity accessible. So, starting with a general question for you both. How well do you feel like you followed this? And if you can, try to be specific about what you could and couldn't track.
Fairly well. I really needed those blatant lines where Tom Cruise is like, oh, the Bible, Job, or whatever. But I can't remember anything specific.
Okay, David?
I followed the characters, like what their desires and actions. I think you follow it clearly, but I think if you try to picture the whole grand scheme of like what happened just 10-15 minutes before this screenplay was made, of like Phelps's setup and everything and the mole conversation, to kind of figure out the mess that got us to the opening where all those people die, I feel like it gets a little confusing and convoluted. And the second time watching, I definitely followed it more, but even still then I was like, this is a lot. Like, I feel like they could have streamlined it a little.
So you basically just kind of summarized exactly why I wanted to make this a topic, because there's a phenomenon that happens when I watch this movie, and I've seen it 5 times now, and it's happened every single time. It also happens with the TV show Succession, although it's a very different kind of thing. But, like, I don't blame you, Jelani, for not being able to, like, remember any of it, because that's exactly how I feel with it. Like, anytime I watch this, I'm like, when I'm in the middle of it, when I am actively watching it, I can basically track what's going on. But if you pause it, or when I get to the end, I cannot really spit the plot back at you. Like, I tried at this time, I paused just before the Langley heist, and I was like, okay, let me see if I can explain the plot to myself. And I did a little bit, but eventually I kind of was like, well, okay, so there's that, but I don't know why that is happening. And I know what happens in the rest of this movie, and I still don't know why. So I just kind of want to examine that phenomenon in a way with this. It's not exactly that, but with this topic, I want to look at, like, what is being done to make us, like, track while we're watching it so that we aren't lost. What are, like, the things that they are communicating well, even though we don't understand the details well enough to be able to summarize it. And I want to talk about it with this especially because that's not really the case for most of the Mission Impossible movies. Like, even ones that I don't like as much, I can pretty much summarize the plot of them pretty well. Even if I don't know all of the twists, like, I think I could do the pause test and be like, okay, I can tell you why Tom Cruise is doing this stunt right now, like what the external objective is. and track it all the way back to like the core motivations. I can't do that with this movie. And I really enjoy that about it too, though, is like I feel like for all of the confusion that I have by the end of it, I am never bored during this movie. Anytime that I watch it, I'm always leaning forward. And it's almost like there's some things that I wish I could erase my brain and watch again for the first time. And I almost get that with this movie because I can never remember it correctly. So, like, the mystery of it is still a mystery every time I watch it, which is really fun, I think. But I wish that the later movies had more of this, because I think the later entries have a much bigger emphasis on stunts. I think, David, you were talking about this before, or maybe it's in one of your notes for later. Like, the way that they really scale up the action, which I like, but they kind of scale back on the espionage stuff, and I kind of miss that. Rogue Nation has a lot of it, and that's why I enjoy it, but I want them to bring that back in 7 and 8, hopefully, because I really enjoy that part of it. So, bring in another question to both of you. What do you think is done from a writing perspective that helps us to follow all of this despite the complexity?
I would say for me, the two biggest things are what Jelani said, where Ethan will articulate what is visually already being displayed if you're not picking up on it. And then Shonda Rhimes, I don't think she's the one who created this rule, but she's the first person I heard who brought it up. And she was talking about how, like, pretty much audiences need that character to attach to who doesn't really know what's happening to kind of guide you through the world, because the audience doesn't know what's happening. So putting Ethan there and allowing him to figure out it in real time because he's being framed, I think allows the audience to just, as long as you stay with him in real time, you're good. You don't have to follow all the jargon and this place to this place and this person did this to this person and who's Max. I thought it was Job, but as long as you just are there with him in real time, you can kind of get what he wants and where you want him to be and like feel those emotions. So it was like enough.
Okay, Jelani, what do you think is there?
Just the lines.
Okay.
That's it.
I'll agree with your points there, especially the protagonist one. I really like the way that Ethan is designed as, like, I wouldn't call him a full-on audience surrogate, because there are a lot of things that he understands better than we do as the audience. But particularly in this one, he is being surprised by these twists as much as we are, to a point. And Jelani, you have some good counterpoints for that in your topic. So I'll save that for when we get there. But I think the fact that Ethan is not as lost as we are, but he's trying to figure all of this out too, is really helpful, because it kind of makes it organic for him to do those concise lines that you were talking about, Jelani, where he's like, all right, once we get to the end of this conversation, he's like, I find Max, I deliver the knock list, whatever he says. Like, it makes that, like, boiling everything down feel organic. And I think Tom Cruise as an actor is kind of essential to that too, because he can commit to, like, the emotional performance of those moments enough that even if we don't follow his dialogue, we can track his, like, intensity enough to understand what we need to. Like, when he's getting betrayed, we don't need to know how, because he's performing in a way where, like, it's coming through. The mechanics of it might be lost, but we know when he realizes that Jim set him up and is screwing him over, we're like, okay, I get that part. How it all happens, I don't know. But Jim screwed him over. I know that much. And I think the other major thing with this is the visuals, because we do have a lot of moments that make the more complicated parts of this, or the more important ones at least, are visualized. Like, mostly I'm thinking of the Langley heist, when he goes in, like, we see all of the mechanics that are in place there. We see all of the like things that can go wrong in the locked room, and the guy that they have to worry about being like they visualize all of it. And I think that's really helpful because it emphasizes what we need to know to understand that scene. Like, even as a 10-year-old, I could track that scene when he dives into the room and is like being quiet and all that. The iconic scene from this, like, that all still worked because there were visuals. I probably tracked none of the dialogue, but some of it still came across. So I think that's impressive. David, you can compare them to the later movies as well, but I want to like just hold this up in comparison to more recent blockbusters, because there feels like there's like a hand holding that happens where stuff gets a little oversimplified, and you have plots that involve way simpler MacGuffins and just so much like slowing down so that we're like, okay, the audience is gonna get this. Like, what's coming to mind for me right now is the climax of the Winter Soldier, the Captain America movie, where it's like, that's a really simple MacGuffin thing where it's just like, put the flash drive in these 3 ships, I think is the way it works in that one. I just find that so much less appealing than this kind of communication of stakes and mechanics, communicating what needs to be delivered to the audience. I like this one better, where there's a trust in the audience of like, we know you're not going to get all of this, but we're going to give you what you need to enjoy it, and you can like kind of embrace the not knowing. Like, that just is so much more appealing to me than something that I can follow more easily, but it's just kind of boring. I don't know if there's exactly a question in there, but it's just a comparison that I want to bring up, if you guys have any points with that.
I'm trying to think of like another recent one that I remember better.
Well, David, I know you're somewhat of a Succession fan, so just because that's another thing that I feel like happens with this, like, I have the same experience where I'm like, I don't really know what the business deal that they're doing is, but I know who's on whose side and who Logan just screwed over, and that Kendall's making an alliance with Jerry or whatever. That stuff all tracks, but I never really understand the jargon of it. And I think that's an interesting counterpoint, because there's never like a visual aid there like there is in this movie. And I don't want to like derail us into talking about Succession because it's a different thing, but how do you feel like they pull that off? Or is that your experience at all?
No, that's definitely my experience. And it's the same thing whenever I watch like any kind of profession based, like when I watch The West Wing, like I don't know what it's like to be the president. I don't understand the intricacies. Or when I watch Scandal or Grey's, like I don't understand the medical terms, but it's all about like communicating character. Like you have to give the audience enough to know why you're rooting for this person and win them over. And I feel like Succession, you can kind of find different characters to root for, and like with this one, like you're rooting for Ethan. But I feel like those things, some stories or films or TV shows that have that also have MacGuffins coexisting that are like pushing the plot forward. So I don't know. I feel like I never really like a MacGuffin. They're just whatever to me. I feel like very few times is it done well, and even then when it's done well, it's like the one everyone points to is like the briefcase in like Pulp Fiction, or like the shark in Jaws, and it's like even then it's like that's it. Like that to me doesn't scream like a literary device I like in screenwriting. So yeah, I never really enjoy it. I think that's like a Deus Ex Machina to me. I've never been too keen on those either.
I think it can work though, and like the knock list is definitely a MacGuffin in this movie, but I feel like they make that work. And this series, I think, is often a testament to what good MacGuffin stories can look like. Because I think basically every movie has a MacGuffin at some point. It's not always like present throughout the whole thing. But I find that the more interesting entries in the franchise are ones where we don't have to worry about the impact that the MacGuffin will have. It's about the acquisition of it. The biggest appeal, I think, of this franchise is that everything is really, really hard. Like, all of the best heists in this and the biggest stunts are like, I think they're usually acquiring a MacGuffin. Not always. But a lot of times it's just, you gotta get this thing, and it's really, really, really well protected. So here's just a ton of like different moving parts that you have to get through. I often think the more moving parts, the better in that. There's definitely a balance, but I feel like this series, in the specific examples that we have, it's worse when it's too simple. And I like how many mechanics are in place and how many intricacies Tom Cruise has to go through to get the MacGuffin here, because that's the interesting part.
Yeah, that's the best scene.
Yeah, I don't know what the broader point is that I'm making there. Because I agree with you, most stories with MacGuffins are, not that they can't work, but it is a kind of weak plot device. It can be done well, and I think this is a good movie that centers around a MacGuffin. But you gotta do the work also.
Yes. And like you're saying, like, the work here, it may not be enough to completely validate the MacGuffin or bring me as an audience member into being super invested in the MacGuffin, because what brings me in, like, after sitting up forward for the spectacle, like, the thing that I got invested in is, like, more so Ethan clearing his name and, like, just that story, and not so much the actual physical device, even though that would tie in part to it. So, like, I think just having that spectacle there is enough, and I think that's why, like, I remember one of our conversations off air was something a while ago, and you were telling us, like, that was like the trope in Mission Impossible of all the things from the first movie to stay. It was like the voiceover, oh, it's an impossible job and we're gonna do it, music, then into like the scene breakdown. And like there's a reason I think that became iconic and people are so into it.
Yeah, because like the stunts are, there are some philosophies of storytelling that are basically epitomized in the Langley heist. And I think we're going to talk more about it later, so I won't get too into it. But I've heard the philosophy that like stories are just about creating a simple task or like a simple objective and throwing obstacles in your protagonist's way to make it hard. You can make it the simplest objective in the world, but if you make the obstacles interesting, then you're going to get a good story. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but I know it is a philosophy that exists, and I think there is a truth to it that this movie exemplifies really well.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I remember falling asleep in class to that one. And I used to think the Nolan Batman movies were just people gruffly whispering in dark rooms, just talking about the plot. Because whenever I glanced at any of the three movies playing, it was this or Batman on the motorcycle or in the Batmobile. So was he betrayed? Okay, was he betrayed or not? Because at the end, when dude is on the watch, it makes me think, oh, this whole mission was a setup, and dude was never really betrayed by, is it MI5?
IMF.
Oh, it is
Yeah,
IMF.
Phelps doesn't. What Ethan's like, come out, Phelps. Like, we can get you out of hiding. Like, you can stop pretending to be dead. And Phelps is like, once the job is done, wink, wink, because he has to keep it up that he's dead, or else like the jig is up. So once like that happens, and Ethan like is clued into it, he just destroys his whole world with Google Glass because he like streams it to whatever that guy's name. I don't want. It sounds like Kavanaugh. I don't think it's Kavanaugh.
Kittredge.
Kittredge.
Nah, but like my question was, why was Kittredge ready? Like that's what threw me off and made
Like,
me
why
think,
did it already have that link?
Yeah,
I don't
why? Know. That's what made me think, oh, this entire thing Ethan was in on the mole hunt too, and they never actually betrayed him. I'm sure there are plot holes there, but that's cool. That's a cool twist. Like, this was all just to out dude as the mole. That's awesome. Because it made absolutely zero sense as to why the glasses were already streaming to Kittrus's watch, and he was ready and waiting for that to happen. Like, he just answered it with a quip, and I was like, oh, okay, he was in on it. Like, he didn't have any sort of reaction to seeing dude alive.
Yeah, I didn't like that actor.
I don't understand. So he was betrayed, and Ethan was really trying to clear his name. But
I think so. I'm not positive. Like I said, I as many times as I've seen it, I don't actually have the greatest handle on it.
okay, that's not good.
I lose it in the beginning. I get the it's like Phelps betrays Ethan and frames him as the mole because Phelps himself is the mole. But what I get confused is like the list thing, because like if Phelps betrays Ethan, is he always gonna have the plan that Ethan survives? Because that's the only way he gets the actual list that he's supposed to send to that person. Like, the list that group gets is fake. So did he also have a hand in setting up the fake list?
So I'm not positive about this. I don't know that Jim actually cares about the knock list. I think Ethan was not supposed to survive, and because he does, like, Jim just has to tie up that loose end. And I'm honestly not sure though. Like,
What is he trying to do?
I don't know, and I want to get into, like, I have a couple more points I want to make with this, but this, I think, is tying very well to your topic, Jelani, and I'm glad you brought it up because, like, basically everything that I say in this topic is kind of refuted. Like, I think it's all true until the climax, and you have some really good counterpoints that I want you to go into. Before we get to that, I want to go back to something you brought up a few minutes ago. Where do you think this movie differs from both Tinker Tailor and the Dark Knight trilogy?
Well, I didn't watch Tinker Tailor.
Okay, I have, and I'll just say I think it's a testament to why you need the visuals, because Tinker Tailor, I think, does good espionage
that's why I brought
stuff.
it up.
Yeah, like, that feels like a more grounded spy movie, but also, like, I'm very bored when I watch it.
I think one person had a gun in the whole movie, and it was at the beginning.
Yeah, it's like trying to be like Mission Impossible for, like, I don't know.
I've never seen it.
For the college grad. Wait, you didn't watch it for Lit for Screenwriters? We were supposed to.
Nope.
We saw it in class.
Tinker Tailor is like Mission Impossible, but there's nothing fun in it. Like, where do you feel like the comparison between this and the Dark Knight trilogy is?
I thought it was just people talking. Like, I used to think Nolan Batman was like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, but for superhero movies where they're just talking instead of anything happening.
So do you feel like you follow them better? Like, which one... I guess I want to, like, compare your experience with it, because my experience watching the Dark Knight trilogy is nothing like my experience watching this. So is it similar for you?
I think I follow the Batman movies better, but I can't recite. First of all, it's been a minute, but I can't recite either one of these movies, the trilogy or this movie, back to you, anything that happened to them. I can tell you, like, specific events, but if you were to ask me to describe this movie linearly,
I think it might be a fair comparison. Like, at least The Dark Knight, I think, well, I mean, Rises gets kind of messy, but Begins, I feel like you can kind of track that a little easier. But there are a lot of moving parts in The Dark Knight where it is a little bit more. And, like, Nolan is kind of known in some ways for relying on momentum. And I think this movie does that a bit as well, where it's like, you don't need to remember everything that happened before perfectly, but you know enough to understand where things are at right now. I think that's helpful. The only other point I had with this, I kind of mentioned, like, how the design of the protagonist, I think, helps with it. A lot of that is that for this movie, Ethan is personally invested in like the mission, the external plot, like for himself. He's trying to clear his name, and I think that matters a lot because to compare to a different franchise, James Bond is almost never super personally invested in any of his missions. Most of them, in one way or another, are an assignment. And some of them, I think, try to make it a little more personal for him, but it's usually, at the end of the day, just a job for him. And comparing to the other Mission Impossibles, the second and third movie both give Ethan a love interest. And on paper, that sounds like it would work better for investing him and us as the audience in the mission. I can't speak to other people's experience with that because I think some people would disagree with me on this, but I find 2 and 3 weaker because of that. I think it's better for getting us invested in like the specifics of the mission if it is a more like directly personal thing rather than somebody else's life being in danger. I think that kind of distracts from, or it depersonalizes the intricacies, and I think every like twist in this has a direct personal stake for just Ethan. What does that lend the story as a whole thematically? I don't think it does anything there, but the experience of it, I think, is elevated because of that. Other people might disagree. David, if you feel differently, I would welcome your counterpoints here.
No, I just said I was invested because he's trying to clear his name, not because of the MacGuffin.
Right.
And then I said I like the other ones, the 4 and 6, because the crew has to clear their name because they're usually like, oh, you did this terrorist attack, but it really wasn't you. That's what I like.
So do you agree about the love interest point as well? Do you think
I never like love interest. Love isn't real. Just get married for money and then die like everyone else.
Hit him with it.
That's why Bruce always used to be like, you want to know a quick way to make someone invested? Give your character someone to fall in love with. And I'd be like, or die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can work. Like, maybe this isn't the best movie to talk about it with, or franchise, but it does feel like love interests are often thrown in needlessly or just incorporated poorly. Like, we were kind of laughing at it when we did the watch along for the second one, like how unearned that romance is and how much they rely on it for like every motivation that Tom Cruise has in that movie. And granted, it's really goofy, and we get a more grounded version of that in the third. But personally, I just think this is a franchise that does not lend itself to having a good romantic subplot, even if it's as simple as like making a damsel in distress out of the hero's wife. Like, even that simple of a plot mechanic, I think, just doesn't really belong in this franchise.
Yeah, for me, it's all about the mission. Like, James Bond being born out of being sexist and being misogynistic and how he viewed women and making him a sex symbol kind of retroactively in cinema has probably been the biggest impact on why people see like espionage films without like a love interest, and it's like, this is weird. But like, if you really think about it, why would spies fall in love?
Yeah.
That's like the one person who would not. They are trained to not fall in love.
Yeah, there's like 2.5 flavors of Bond girl that I feel like we usually get. One is like just a random hot person for him to hook up with, and then the other is a person who is somehow involved in the mission that is probably a double agent, but for some reason they either choose to or have to sleep together at some point. There's kind of only a couple of ways to do it, and Bond has kind of done all versions of it at this point.
James Bondage.
Yeah, I'm sure there's people who have made that joke.
No, I'm the first.
I'm sure there's people who have made that video.
That's where my mind was going, but I'm sorry that came off as a diss. I just didn't want to. I didn't mean it as a diss. Yeah, I appreciate this movie for not having that. And we do, I suppose it's not even fair to say that it doesn't have it, because there is a little bit of that with Claire. Although I don't even know if, like, she's trying to seduce him that much. Like, they kind of say that she is, but I'm like, is she, or is she just, like, kissing his hand for some reason?
She just seems lost. Like, it seems like she, until the heist in the middle of it, she just seems lost.
I hate the direction Brian De Palma gives her. Like, anytime they're in, like, the safe house area and there's, like, a news revelation on the TV, or he figures out something in the book, like, there's always just, like, her in the corner looking, like, out the side of her eye, like, looking at him.
Yeah, that's when
and I'm like, what is this? Like, what a waste of a character.
Yeah, and oddly, like, I think the relationship that I end up being more invested in this is Ethan and Luther. Something that kind of gets lost, like, Luther is the only other character who is in all of the movies, even though he's barely in 4. But I kind of wish they committed more to the bromance between them in the other ones, because it's here in this one, and I like it. And I kind of like that the movie ends with them, like, grabbing drinks, because Luther's the only guy who didn't screw him over by the end at any point. And it's
we
like,
have the meats.
What?
The Arby's?
Yeah.
That's him.
Oh, that's him? That's Ving Rhames?
Yeah, did you guys not know that?
I didn't know that.
I would have never known that.
Are you serious?
It makes sense now that you're saying it. I figured that was some other voice actor.
Oh my god. I was wondering why I was met with silence. It's because y'all didn't know.
I didn't know.
Not because it wasn't funny. Okay, thanks.
Sorry. I hope somebody listening got that. No, but, like, they don't... In the later movies, I feel like they just kind of write him off as just kind of a sidekick who's not even really there that much. Like, at this point, Simon Pegg's character is more of a direct sidekick to Ethan, and he doesn't show up until the third movie. Like, I wish they gave him more direct shine in the later movies, because he's really cool in this one, but for better or worse, it's probably his best of the franchise. Maybe it's just that Ving Rhames, maybe he doesn't want to do stunts, so they write him accordingly, but you could still do stuff with that character, and I wish they did. But in this one, it does work. I enjoyed the couple of scenes where we do kind of... Like, he gives Luther the knocklet, or he doesn't... What does he do? This leading up to the climax, he, like, puts some kind of trust in him. And I'm like, I like this. This is better than a love interest subplot. It's like, there's still a tension, there's still a relationship that I care about. I don't know, it just works. The end of my points for this topic. So we kind of got into it a bit, but Jelani, let's go to your topic.
Messy climaxes. We already talked a little bit about the Mole Hut and Kittredge maybe being in on it, maybe not. We don't know, and I don't think that's a good thing. It had a great setup. Everyone was all in one place. All the pieces were set. And it immediately goes downhill after Phelps claps Claire. Why does he kill Claire?
I don't have a good answer.
In that instance, it makes 0 sense. Picture you, an old white man.
With the H.
Okay, yeah, continue.
An old white man, you are presumed dead by your super secret fictional organization. You have the opportunity to take down the front man for the operation to out you. Again, this is when I thought Kittredge was in on it. And the one who will later kill you, and you, as Jim Phelps, played by John Voight, choose to shoot your wife. Okay, dude. The entire helicopter scene. I'm giving it a pass on effects. But I feel...
Really?
Yeah, for 96.
I think it holds up okay.
Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm giving it a pass because it's 96. But I felt absolutely nothing. We know Tom Cruise ain't gonna die. We know the villains are going to die, or at the very least, lose. Everything felt needlessly drawn out with that helicopter scene. And I wonder, was it exciting for the time? None of us were there when it came out in theaters, so we don't know. I was born a year later. And I don't I don't think I was old enough to watch the movie, so I don't know if this was exciting for the time. Oh man, this helicopter looks super real, and he's really on it, and this stunt, woo! I don't know if he's gonna make it out of this one, fam. Also, I ask, is this back when Tom Cruise was doing his own stunts? Because I can't imagine this was actually filmed at the back of a moving train with the helicopter strapped to it. Also, why was the gum the thing that stuck it to them? Was it supposed to be for... Was his name Jack?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see him on the cast list on IMDb or anywhere else. R.I.P. Jack. I liked him for the short time he was there. He used the gum twice in the movie. I didn't even expect it to come up again after the aquarium scene. So I don't know why they brought it up again or why he even had more gum. But alright. Again, this was when I thought everybody was in on it. The reveal that everyone but Ving Rhames, Luther, Claire and Phelps were in on it was really cool. I'll give it that. When I thought it was that. And Evan, in your notes, you bring up a good question. I'll let you ask it about Phelps. Because I am lost as well.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, I agree with you that I don't know why he shoots Claire instead of Ethan. There might be some reason that is alluded to, but it is not communicated clearly enough. And we get zero resolution or explanation for that. Like, as soon as Claire is dead, never mentioned. We don't even get Ethan, like, looking at her. Like, there's nothing. And yeah, I don't know why he does it. Once he's getting away, I get that it's like protagonist stopping the antagonist, but what happens if he gets away on that helicopter? I don't know.
Because Max is the one with the knock list that's being downloaded, so...
Yeah, and I don't know if any of that has anything to do with Phelps getting away. Like, nope. If those are connected, I don't know how. They might even not be
I think he
connected.
just has the money at this point, right? That's the only thing he would have.
Oh, no.
That she gave him. But, I mean, Ethan doesn't care about the money.
Yeah,
he wants to stick it to them.
Well, Jelani, you have a point that you haven't gotten to yet that I think explains a lot of these problems very succinctly. I don't want to steal your thunder on
Which one is it?
About the steaks.
Medium rare.
I knew one of you was going to go there.
One of us always does it, including you.
Yeah.
There's not a hatred. You can't be hating on steaks.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to establish the stakes when you're keeping the audience in the dark. If you don't know, if you choose to have your audience in the dark, like, if they don't know what's going on, especially in the climax, that's not a really good... I don't think that's a really good time to do that.
Yeah, or if you do the, like, Ocean's 11 reveal of, like, this is what was happening. You gotta, like, have you have a moment of, like, you do the twist on the audience. It's like, this is what was happening the whole time, really.
Yeah, that's what I thought the reveal was. But with anything with Phelps after that, what is he doing? Where is he going? Do they even have a plan? Like, where is... what's the dude's name? Knife guy.
Kidridge?
No, knife guy.
He's flying the helicopter.
Yeah. Jean Reno.
Not the actors. I meant the character.
Krieger.
Yeah, but he's in the helicopter.
Krieger?
Yeah.
He's just in the helicopter.
He's like, oh,
yeah. Where are they?
Like, where are they planning on going after
they flew the helicopter
in the tunnel? I don't know. It's a good question.
Like, why did dude even know to get in the helicopter?
The part of it that I get is that Krieger is, like, friends with Claire and Jim anyway, which is why Claire brings him in. Like, that part I get, like, why he's in league with them. But the thing about keeping the audience in the dark, I really think is the key to all of this. Because in the other big sequences of this movie, like the opening at the gala and the Langley heist, we get a couple of scenes setting up the goal of each of those and like what the plan is. So when it deviates from the plan, we understand that it's a deviation. We have no idea. Well, okay, actually that's not true. We have some idea of the plan. We know Luther's role in the climax. Like, that part I track fine. He's like jamming Max's signal because like they need
the meats.
For some reason they need her to think that she's sending the knock list to Joe, but they can't let it actually happen. So he's there to prevent it from actually happening. Everything with Jim, we have no idea what Ethan's plan is going in. So when he does shoot Claire and when the helicopter shows up, like, did they know that was going to happen? Is that like something they're prepared for? Is that a total curveball for Ethan? We have no idea.
Maybe he shot her because Claire doesn't like flying.
I mean, it's more of an explanation than we get, as far as I can tell. Like,
that did it. Make me part of Mission Impossible.
What do you guys think about the reveal of Phelps at the end when he like comes busting through the door really quick with the gun? And he's like, but I'm here. That makes me laugh.
Well, I mean,
like in a bad way.
That's a, well, I don't know if this is exactly what you're talking about, but like in terms of the surprise, like I think of pulling the rug out from under us that they could have done is like if you didn't reveal earlier, like when Ethan realizes that Jim screwed him over, you could have maybe saved that reveal for on the train. So we go into it with a little bit less information than Ethan, and because we already know and he already knows that Jim is the one who set him up, because we have that whole montage showing like what was really happening in the opening. You could have saved that, and I still don't know if that lends any more like meaning to what does happen in the climax. But if you're going to like keep things from us, I feel like that was the thing to hide. But we already know that.
Maybe it was to like show the intelligence of Ethan. I don't know. Like, we kind of already understand that he's intelligent. I don't know if they needed to reveal it.
He's so intelligent. He solves everything super fast. And like the minute someone's like, I'm about to get one over on you, he's like, ha ha ha. But I'm a handsome white dude, so that doesn't happen in movies. I have one over on you, and I have the disc, sir. So it's like he's always like, I never question his intelligence. I just think from a filmmaking standpoint, it's such cheese. Like, of all the cool ways to reveal someone on a train, that dialogue to that quick cut door swing open. Well, really, Mr. Hunt, I'm here with my gun. I was like, what is this, bro? Yeah, it makes me laugh a little.
Is it very Bond villain-esque?
It feels like old school kind of Bond. Yeah.
But Bond doesn't like do twist, like Ethan feels like he's setting up Jim there very deliberately. That's not a Bondish thing.
Oh no, just the way like the door kicks in, like the actual practical filmmaking of it.
You're too late, okay. Ethan. I've already turned the whole train gay.
Like, it feels like such a 60s, it feels so old. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy.
In one train trip, John Voight turned the entire train gay. Wow. That's impressive. Or really terrible, depending on how he did it. The train itself. Okay, that's equally confusing. But yeah, but I think there's like, maybe there is just plot holes all over that climax, and we just don't understand it well enough to see which things are plot holes and which aren't. I could believe that. I could also believe that there is a logic to it that all checks out, but if there is, it is not communicated. And I think either of those things are kind of a failure of this climax. I still enjoy it, but I think I could enjoy it more. And Tenet has a very similar problem to this. And I bring that up because I think there's a similarity between the two of them. Mostly I'm saying that because Patrick Willems recently did a video on Tenet and categorizing what he calls vibes movies that are like, it's just about like, you don't have to know what's happening, like basically what I was describing earlier, like you don't have to know exactly what's happening, you just know that the protagonist looks cool and he's going there to get a thing, and it's just kind of fun. And he categorizes this movie as one of them. And I hear that, but where I think this and Tenet fall off is in their climax, where Tenet does try to communicate the stakes of its climax, but it's so convoluted and it doesn't do it quite well enough that like I could not track it the first time I watched it. Now I understand it. We were not brought up to speed sufficiently. So it's a similar problem. Your point about stakes, going back to it, Jelani, like keeping the audience in the dark is inherently going to make the stakes harder to communicate. Like you have to do it retroactively, or you just got to do it beforehand. Stakes are all about possibilities, so we have to have enough understanding of what the possible outcomes are to be invested in it. And sometimes I think that's done too blatantly, where it's just like either the planet blows up or it doesn't. All right, I never care for those, but I understand the stakes. Like that isn't the issue there. You could make a really tense climax without communicating everything to us, but clearly there's not enough that's communicated here. And I think it could be as simple as like just clue us in on Ethan's plan, like have him talk to just Luther about it, or do a thing where we pull out the rug. Like there is a better version of this climax.
Oh, I think so too.
I guess these stakes were not well done.
That I can agree to.
That pretty much sums it up.
Cause it's like the cook on it.
Yep. Yeah. You don't need to explain the joke. we both got it.
Cause there are different temperatures at which.
I know that. I have to know them when I work in a restaurant. One last point that I have with this is that I don't think this is necessarily part of the problem, but it could have been a potential solution, is if there was more of a denouement with this, because we get very little. Once they stop that helicopter, it's just, nope, now we're over to Luther and Ethan having drinks, basically. I think it's like, that's the entire thing. We get like no, like there's not even a scene between Kitteridge and Ethan being like, well, I thought you were the bad guy, but I guess I was wrong.
Or, good job on the mission, because we were both in on it the whole time.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, but like we don't get anything. And I think that's why we're all so confused right now. Do we need that scene? Would it make it better? I don't know. But I think there is a consequence to not having it, or not having sufficiently communicated stakes beforehand.
I agree.
Medium rare.
Okay, then David, let's move into yours. Scaling spectacle.
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier in the episode, I'm not the biggest espionage action movie person, but I do love a good movie. It's really easy for me to just turn my brain off and enjoy whatever I'm watching if it's just like a good movie, a good fun time. So a vibe movie, if you will. So I was like, what makes me interested in this series, and what a lot of people I think are interested in, it's the spectacle. It's why the midpoint Langley heist is like everybody's favorite thing. It's everything. And I think there is a lot to learn from this movie specifically on balancing that scale, because I think this one does tip a little over, and I think the Impossible films have like learned from it and have like really grown and shown. And I think a lot of films in general should just learn that like sometimes more is not always better. And I think even in TV you see that, and I think it was a critique Game of Thrones got when they got the budget and they abandoned and went a little too hard into VFX, but didn't give you some stakes sometimes. So, because I really do agree with everything you guys were saying. I think that is the biggest issue with the climax, but let's get into it. So I really enjoy the fact that this first movie really does especially in the screenplay, really does a good job tying major story beats to the spectacles that happen. So even if I'm a little bit like bored or I'm out of it for certain parts, when those major character moments or plot moments happen, there's usually a spectacle during, before, or right after. So I'm leaned forward a little bit and I am paying attention. And that was something that was able to sustain my interest and keep me at least as invested as I could be, because like we're saying, this is kind of a hard film to track at times. And for me, I think I was having a hard time trying to figure out how to articulate it, but I think it was Jelani's stakes point. Like, the best spectacles in this film to me are all tied in with the stakes that Ethan has been given at that moment. So like the first big reveal spectacle moment is like that explosion water aquarium in that restaurant place that they're meeting at, and like getting to learn, okay, where Ethan's at. This person who's running IMF thinks I'm the mole. I've been betrayed. I'm completely alone. I'm in the dark. I have to learn some more. And to have that to like hold on to as an audience member was really substantial. And then to have the visual extravaganza of the water explosion and all that action pouring into the street was really satisfying. And then it just pays off tenfold, in my opinion, when we get to the Langley heist whole kind of breakdown, like we've kind of been talking about this whole time. Like, that scene is just so fantastic, and giving the stakes of, all right, now he's running his own team. It's not Phelps running it. He has some people he thinks he can trust, or he's hoping he can trust, but he's not entirely sure. He's a bit less in the dark now because he knows what the fake list was and where the real list is and what he has to do, but he's not completely there yet. So the audience is even more like they're just in this ride at this point, like right there with Ethan. And then to have that amazing spectacle that super holds up because it's all practical effects, in my opinion at least, is like really satisfying. Like, that is the peak to the film for me. And I think like taking the midpoint and taking the climax and comparing and contrasting the two, I think you can learn a lot as future filmmakers or amateur filmmakers if you're wanting to learn from these type of films. Like, because on paper, the spectacle of the train going across the English Channel, a helicopter flying into a tunnel, that is, and then there's the blocking with the hackers and everything happening in the train, that is so much bigger than the room break-in heist. But because of how they do it and how they do the cross-cutting and how they do the music and the voiceover to explain the visuals and everything that's being implemented, so you care with the stakes that we were discussing earlier, it allows for such a higher or heightened level of investment for the audience that you are really into it. But like, and like I'm saying, on paper, you should be really into the spectacle with a train in a tunnel under the English Channel, and your protagonist is finally getting his comeuppance with the antagonist, and they're coming face to face, and Ethan's completely finally out of the dark, and he is completely here to kind of fulfill what this whole movie's been leading up to. But it's not as satisfying to watch, and I think it's because of how it's filmed and how it's executed. It's just a little bit messier. The CGI doesn't exactly hold up, and it's like, I think if you just dialed back how like awesome of like a visual that sounds in your head on paper and made it, even if it was just a little bit smaller, like a room or a room in a hallway, like that heist scene, and just have it be so well executed, it'll hold up longer. So that was really like a learning bit for me from these movies. Like, that was something I took away. So I'm curious if like you guys saw that in any of this, or anything you can learn from like comparing how that spectacle of the midpoint with the heist was executed versus the spectacle of the climax.
I'm a big fan of stakes. I always take stakes into consideration. What's at risk? What can you lose? Who might the audience be connecting to in this moment? The heist at Langley had me on the edge of my seat. The ending did not. Like, how not to do a climax when there aren't established things like why your villain is there, why your villain is even the mole.
You mentioned earlier when we were talking about the climax that like you didn't feel worried for Ethan at all. Were you worried for him in the Langley heist, like where you, not that he would die, but that
Oh, that he would get caught? Yeah.
you were like that was a possibility in your head.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been so long since the first time I saw it, but I think it was for me as well.
For sure. Especially when that guy's like slipping it. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, I was leaning more towards, like, no, they're not going to get caught, of course. Somebody might get caught, though. Like, it might not be Ethan, but this ain't boding well for everybody involved. Like, somebody might slip up, quite literally Krieger. The stakes don't have to be life or death all the time, even though it probably was if any of them got caught. No, I wasn't fully invested with that, especially in the beginning, too, because everybody died, and I was not. Once Jack died, I was like, all right, y'all got to get your team out of there. And then the next person died, and I was like, oh, it's over. Oh, it's up for the whole team except Ethan. And then I was like, wait, this is John Voight. He's not dead.
That team seems so cool too. Like I wish they were the team in this. Like they seemed awesome.
I liked
agree.
Jack. Jack was so cool.
But like all of
Like
them,
this-
like that opening scene is like everything I want from a spy movie. Like that opening
With the glasses
gala.
and them, like, nodding to each other. And yeah, that was dope.
Bruh, I love it. I love those aesthetics. So just like a fancy party, but like they're not there to mingle. They're like just they've got the earpieces in. Like, oh hell yes, I love it so much.
I enjoyed that too. I must admit that is always a nice one.
And then they killed them all. Man, Jack got it the worst. He got stabbed through the face.
I know. I forgot about that. I was like, whoa.
That was...
God
They
damn.
cut away from it, but that was brutal. Like, you still see the impale briefly. Also, I always thought the theme was playing during the heist scene. But I think those were always during the parodies of the scene. Without the music, the scene plays so much more tense.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And he's
Like,
like,
the
from this
silence.
point on, you have to be completely silent, and then it goes completely silent, and you're like, yay.
Yeah, because you couldn't do that scene with score. It had because every single thing that he does in that scene, like every tiny noise that he makes, is like oh, not too loud. Yeah.
Imagine he sneezed or his pager rang or dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to feel how tense it is, and with sound being one of those triggers, I think it would just take the audience out.
Mm-hmm.
What else parodies that scene aside from Shrek 2? Because that's the only one that I'm thinking of.
A bunch of other things.
I know the stunt from Ghost Protocol gets parodied in Paddington, but
What?
yeah,
Why did you see Paddington?
it wasn't exactly by choice. I don't know.
That's a good movie, though.
I didn't love
I
it.
haven't
I
seen
know
it.
a
I'm
lot
not
of
gonna
people
judge
really
it.
like it. It didn't work for me, but that's beside the point. They parody the like climbing the Burj Khalifa scene in that. What else parodies this one though?
Other things.
I'm not thinking of anything aside from Pinocchio and Shrek 2. I don't think I clocked that yet. Like I probably did whenever I saw Shrek 2 after seeing this, but I did not like retroactively. I wasn't like, oh, like the scene in Shrek 2 when I saw this. It was just its own thing.
No, I've seen the parodies, but I can't help you. I don't know. Maybe I was only thinking of Shrek 2. No, I feel like I've seen this outside of Shrek 2 elsewhere, but I can't pinpoint where.
In terms of scale, I think there is a critical mass, and this movie is hardly the worst offender of it. But there is there's such a thing as too big. David, you basically said it earlier. Like, more and bigger does not mean better. And I feel like the 25 odd years since this movie came out have given us a lot more evidence of that. Like, any kaiju movie, anything with a sky beam, the Matrix sequels, and yes, Jelani Man of Steel,
No.
I think are big proof that more, like, it's partly a plot armor thing, I think, with Man of Steel and the Matrix sequels, because you can send these super powerful beings through 8 buildings and it doesn't hurt them. So it's like, okay, at that point, like, what are we even doing fighting each other here? Like, isn't there a line about that in Man of Steel where Zod's like, well, we could keep throwing these buildings at each other, but what's it gonna do? Like, I know it's not that, but he says something like that, right?
He says, "Where did you train?" On a farm?
No, but there's another. I don't know. I haven't seen that movie since the theater.
No, I'm just saying he says that too.
But there's some line like that, isn't there?
Probably.
I don't know. But it's like that, the final fight in that, or like, I was thinking about Godzilla versus Kong in particular. Like, if bigger meant better, then that movie would be good. But personally, like, the fights between them, it feels like it should be bigger and better because they're gigantic, but I like the fights in John Wick way better, and those are just two people, or not always two, but they're just people.
Suicide Squad had a sky beam. Are you going to call that movie bad?
Yeah.
Wait, Suicide Squad?
Okay.
Yes.
With Will Smith. You going to call that movie bad? What about Fant Four Stick? That had a sky beam.
I didn't see Fant Four Stick.
What about the remake of Ghostbusters?
That had a sky beam. You going to call those movies bad, Evan?
Haven't seen...
What about Chicken Little?
Did that have a sky beam?
Probably.
I don't think it had a
Or
sky
had
beam.
something.
It had a dome.
Avengers 1 had a sky beam.
Yeah, I don't love the sky beamness. Like, there's certainly cases where it can work, but...
Man of Steel had a sky beam.
Yep, and that also... Yep, we don't
That
need
was...
them. They're not... Whatever. Like, I think we've
You
all...
don't stop disrespecting the movie, or I'm gonna start punching you like Superman in the air, in the sky.
Well, that'll be a pretty quick death then. Because I can't take 6 buildings.
I don't
like
like
that.
how accepting you were of me saying that.
I'm just trying to play along, yes-anding you. But I think, that, like, I bring up those in part because it may not necessarily just be the size of it that's the problem. I think it's also that, like, it might be inherent to it, though, because we lose track of, like, the rules, I think, and reality. Because, like, the Langley heist is really wisely scaled because we can all understand what it's like. We've never had to do that, but we've all had to be quiet, and we all know what it's like to have to be quiet or to not sneeze or not touch the floor. Like, we've had to,
Right.
even if you've had to, like, edge around somebody in a hallway, it's kind of tapping into that feeling of, like, I can't touch something. We all know what that is like. We've never been on top of a moving train. So there's a kind of a visceralness that's missing there. But I think another thing that ties into this is the moving parts. Because there's no, like, with all the Skybeam examples and even the climax of this, it's kind of too simple, I think, to get invested in. All it is just, we need to turn off the Skybeam, or we need to stay on the train and stop John Voight from getting onto the helicopter. I think that actually has there's more to be invested in there, but it's still only a couple of elements that are at play. In the Langley heist, we have a bunch of different moving parts, a bunch of different ways that things can go wrong, and that, I think, really matters. I rewatched the stunt from the 4th movie earlier today when he climbs on the Burj Khalifa. And that's a cool scene, but I think it is missing those different factors and different moving parts, because all that is really happening in that scene is just he's climbing the building. There's no other thing that he has to do it before. Like, there's kind of a ticking clock, but it's not even super urgent at that point. And there's nothing that he has to do before another team member can do something else to speak of. Like, it's not time sensitive in, like, a tiered way where it's like, we got to do this before this and then we can do that, and, like, there's not enough points where it can go wrong. It's just he's got to climb, and if he falls, he's dead. Still a cool scene, but I think it is missing that. What it does have is things going wrong, and I think that is another part of it too, is, like, there are crisis moments and parts where we lean forward in the Langley heist, and there really aren't in that train sequence or in any Skybeam sequence that I can recall. Sorry to keep harping on it, but like I think it's just another case where it's like I don't think it matters if you have the biggest thing in the world. That's not going to actually increase the tension. What's going to make us lean forward is creating ebbs and flows and dynamics, not just big CGI, bright lights, big kaiju punching each other.
Right, until the helicopter stops spinning and then the propeller's like 2 inches from your neck versus him falling and being 2 inches from the floor. Like, those are two very different sensations for the audience, at least for me, that I got.
Well, I even kind of like the moment where he's like, that moment at the end. That is one where it is tapping into like, I can still sort of understand what that would feel like. I think the best stunts in the series do tap into that. Like, my other favorite stunt in this series is in the 5th movie when he dives into the tank and just has to hold his breath for a long time. That's less of a twisty mechanic that has moving parts, but it's still something that we've all had to do at one point or another. We understand what it feels like to be underwater and holding your breath. Hopefully we don't know what it's like to come close to drowning, but we've all, like, if you've submerged your head underwater, you can imagine that. There's a physical sensation that it's tapping into that we all are kind of familiar with. Whereas, like, even as cool of a stunt as the skydiving scene in Fallout or the Burj Khalifa scene in Ghost Protocol, it's not as visceral. And in both of those, there aren't really moving parts. There are, like, crisis points, and I think that helps. But it's really just a very simple, like, we got to skydive to this point. We got to climb from one floor to the other. I just think those different ways that things can go wrong really, really add to the scene. David, did you have more points on your topic there?
Nothing that you guys haven't really brought up and that we haven't talked about this whole episode. I think the biggest takeaway comparing these two beats and these two huge sequences in this film is just character and making sure that your audience understands where your character's at and what they want and what they need and what's in the way for them and why that matters. And then just proper filmmaking, because the practicality and the beautiful editing and set design of the actual set of Langley versus the computer generated green screen helicopter and train with the English Channel was just not it.
I heard that was all practical.
Yeah, I heard he was the train.
I mean, if they made it today, he'd do that probably in some, or they might not do that specific stunt today, but there's going to be some train sequences in the new one, so maybe they're actually, come to think of it, from the trailer there is a scene that is on top of a train, so maybe he did basically try it. I don't think there's a helicopter involved.
Did he train for it?
Probably.
Because
I got the joke. Any other last remarks we want to make?
I guess this mission was not impossible. Was that a phone ringing?
No, that was trying to imitate, like, the thing that goes into the theme song.
The what?
The opening, whatever. I was trying to do it like when they light the match and the theme song starts. It goes dun 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 dun. That's how it always starts.
You're not doing the song right.
I'm sorry. I was trying. Okay. If we're done, then we can go to the boilerplates. We will have upcoming episodes. Right now, we have not settled on exactly what we're going to do. But there will be more, so keep your eyes open. Or keep the notification bells, ring them, all of that. I don't know how it works on different platforms, but
Evan doesn't know how to be a YouTuber.
Yeah, don't share it and say that you liked it and come back for click the button that lets you come. I'm trying to do a parody on like, share, subscribe. Smash that like button. And you can do that on our YouTube channel. There we go, transition. Where we've got our video essays and shorts that we're starting to make. If you want to see us talk more about Mission Impossible, you can sign up for our Patreon and watch Mission Impossible 2 along with us. And all of the goofiness in that movie. And boy, is there a lot of it. And you'll get other bonus stuff over there too. Our logo is by Kelsey Hendry. I'm on Letterboxd at ev_Wes. Where are you guys at?
Instagram, Jelani T. Kelly.
Do you guys have any Threads account? Have we started on Threads yet?
Nope.
No, I refuse.
Well, I am still in that safe in Langley, waiting for that one guy before he gets shipped to Alaska. So, I'm gonna miss him. But can't wait to see him one last time.
He's in the bathroom still.
That's alright. When he comes back, he'll be all cleared out, ready to go.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.